Welcome to the first ECD Right Start panel discussion under the National ECD Right Start campaign. My name is Jessica Brown. I'm the Education Officer in ECD from UNICEF, and I'll be moderating this discussion. Thank you very much for joining us. Today we'll be talking about some of the basics about why ECD is important and also introducing you to the Right Start campaign. So in terms of early childhood development, it's a really vital window of opportunity for child development. From the age of 0 to 8 is a window where children learn cognitive skills, language skills, motor skills, socio and emotional skills. And if we get this window of opportunity right, children have a much better chance of long-term outcomes in terms of education, health, and well-being. Poor quality interventions and lack of opportunities in early childhood development can significantly disadvantage young children and reduce their potential for success. Early childhood development has a pivotal role to play in ensuring that children live full and positive lives, but also ensuring that our nation has a really strong foundation for our own human development. ECD has been recognized internationally as one of the most powerful tools for breaking the intergenerational poverty cycle. So let's have a look at this informative video before we meet our guests.
Did you know that 90% of a child's brain development happens before they are 5? If we get the early years of a child's life right, they will have a better chance in life in terms of educational achievements, employment, health, and happiness. And good news, getting the early years right is simple. All it takes is love and care, play and communication, healthy food, and a safe environment. The period from conception to school-going age is a unique window of opportunity to give your child the right start. Visit rightstart.com.na to learn more about how you can make a child's first steps the right steps.
In order to start our conversation, I'd like to introduce you to my panelists today, starting with Ms. Loide Velishavo, the Deputy Director for ECD at the Ministry of Gender Equality, Child Poverty Eradication and Social Welfare. Welcome, Ms. Loide.
Thank you very much, and good day, Jessica.
We also have Mr. Luis Munana, a producer and a developer of really exciting homegrown Namibian content for ECD-age children. Welcome, Luis.
Thank you, Jessica.
And we also have with us Dr. Aune, the education specialist at UNICEF and also an ECD and inclusive education expert. Welcome, Dr. Aune.
Thank you, Jessica, and I'm also happy to be here.
So, Loide, if I can ask you first, what is meant by early childhood development and why are the early years of a child's life so important?
When we talk about early childhood development, it's the period from conception through birth to 8 years of age. During this period, the children's mind grows fast. And this is the time that we need to develop them. We talk about 1,000 days of a child to develop from birth to 2 years of their birthday celebration. During that time, we need to develop this child or these children to the fullest capacity of their potential. That is the period that we need to give these children health, nurturing health, care, early stimulation for them to learn more from home or as well as at the centers. This is the time that parents have to be close to their children for them to teach them the way they want the children to grow in a society.
So maybe Dr. Victor, if I can ask you to expand on that a bit in terms of how the early years and the early foundation really help a child's educational development.
In terms of the foundation for lifelong learning, I would just like to give an example. You can never build a house without laying a foundation. Imagine you lay a house without a foundation and the strong wind comes. That house is going to collapse. And it's exactly the same with early childhood development and early education. So during those years that Loide mentioned, those are the years we need to focus on really strengthening or laying a strong foundation for the child in terms of cognitive, social, emotional, as well as physical development. In this, we talk about also what we call nurturing care. And with nurturing care, we also focus on addressing the issues of how do you nurture the brain to develop, how do you protect the child. We need to feed the child protection in terms of nutrition. We need to also look at protection in terms of toxic stress. Loide mentioned the issues of conception to birth. If the mother is not well protected, if the mother is living with stress and anxiety, that is going to affect the child. So What we basically mean by early education is to make sure that we put the child in a positive environment where the child can survive and thrive and build his or a foundation to contribute towards lifelong learning and sustainable development.
So maybe if I can summarize, my understanding is if in the early years we keep our children close, give them a lot of love, protect them from the harms of this world, ensure that they have healthy food, that they have the basic primary health care, and then that they also be played with, sung with, and have their brain stimulated, then they have a much better chance as they grow up to do well in terms of their education, their health, and their relationships. Is that a decent summary?
Definitely.
Okay, thank you. So now I'd like to move on to talk a bit about the Right Start campaign. The Right Start campaign is a joint venture of the Ministry of Gender Equality, Poverty Eradication and Social Welfare, as well as the Ministry of Education, Arts and Culture, and the Ministry of Health and Social Services. And it's supported by development partners UNICEF, the European Union, and Interteam Swiss. And the aim of the campaign is to raise awareness and reinforce the importance of the early years of a child's life under the slogan, "Make a child's first steps the right steps." The campaign seeks to promote behavior change towards optimal child development, improved integrated ECD policy and implementation as well as service delivery, and to increase national funding for ECD, both at the national level in terms of our public funding, but also in the household level to ensure that children are being prioritized from the funds that come into the household. And we also want to improve the quality of the conversations about ECD and really raise awareness about how critical these early years are, informed by research and neuroscience. And what's very exciting about this campaign is that we've collaborated with some of our local talent to really make sure this is a homegrown campaign. So on that note, I'd like to ask you, Luis, a bit about the Waka Waka Mu program that you've developed, your involvement in the campaign, and what this campaign seeks to achieve.
You said it so beautifully. Make a child's first steps the right steps. Just like Dr. Victor also mentioned, that the foundation is very important. So for us on a production level, it is making it very accessible to the parents, the caregivers, the children at home, and those that have access to TV, those that do not have access to TV, those in the remote areas. So the aim is to reach as many Namibians as possible to promote the Right Start campaign by ensuring that they do get the messages. Make a child's first steps the right steps.
And Loide, I understand that this campaign is a partnership of a lot of players, from private sector, from government, from development partners. So I'd just like to know a bit more about how this campaign came about. How did these partnerships start to form?
The Right Start campaign to early childhood development in Namibia was launched last year in September 2019, and it has to roll until 2023 if funding possible to get it right. This is the partnership with the UNICEF. We talk about Interteam and European Union through our co-developers, Waka Waka Mu. This is really the right start because in the past, we could not reach everyone. We could not reach all the parents for them to have the understanding of the early childhood development or education. But through this intervention, through this relationship that we have with our partners, it makes it possible. And we are reaching many different corners of the country.
And Luis, also just to ask you to expand a bit more, why do you feel that it's so important that we do have these homegrown materials for children and we're not just partnering with existing products or using some of the more westernized child learning materials?
I will make a very simple example. Growing up, if something is said to you in your home language and something is said to you in English, it's so much more powerful if it's said to you in your home language. And even the context of the way it is communicated, it's so much more powerful in your home language versus English. So the importance of developing content that is homemade is for that specific purpose, the language of the heart. Yes, we do develop content in English, but also all the local languages spoken in Namibia. And that makes it even so much more accessible because I can watch TV and see these programs in my own language. So it's so much more powerful in that sense. And also the fact that something that is locally made ensures that we preserve our cultures, for example, because the content that we create touches on culture, it touches on history, touches on education. So all these aspects are being preserved and they're being immortalized for future generations to come, because it's things that are slowly dying out. So with that being said, when you combine all of this and you are trying to deliver an ECD message or to promote ECD, and you're sort of making it fun, making it fun with song and dance and animations, and you are engaging the parents, you are engaging the caregivers, you are engaging children and adults alike, the message is more likely to stick because it's fun, it's integrated, it's in my language, I understand it better, so I will remember it, basically. I'll remember it in that sense.
Yeah. I also think it's wonderful for children to be able to relate to what they're seeing, and they see their region, their local language, their customary dress, and they can hear on the Waka TV shows also stories that maybe they'd heard from their grandparents or from their parents. So it creates a real link and a real ownership, I think.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And just to add, so for those people that are in remote areas who do not have access to a TV show, the Right Start campaign does go there. So this is done through the roadshow. Like Loide mentioned, we are trying to reach all the corners of Namibia. So for those that don't have TV, the roadshows happen throughout the year, and we literally go there and set up a stage show, and we engage the parents, the kids, the teachers, the caregivers, the community at community centers, at preschools, ECD centers, and so forth. And then those that still miss that out, there's the radio element of it. So there are messages on the radio in English and all the local languages spoken. So the aim is to really reach everyone.
We are talking about early childhood development, and we'll be right back. Welcome back, and now we will continue with asking some questions around ECD and the Right Start campaign. And Aune, if I can ask you, when people hear about early childhood development and they hear about its cognitive development, its language development, emotional, social, motor skills, they might think, now this is going to be an expensive endeavor. So can I ask you, is this something that families need to be spending a lot of money on if we're talking about improved financing for ECD? Is it a very costly intervention to get ECD right?
ECD is not an expensive thing at all in terms of household activities. I just want to go back to what Louis said in terms of languages. So the most important thing that we need to change our mindset on is to think about, why is education, early education, important? We don't need money for that. What we need, especially I would like to bring in here the role of fathers. What we need is to take time to talk to our children. We need time to love our children. We need time to read to our children and to play with our children. And it's not expensive at all to sit with your child and read to your child. Louis mentioned the issue of languages and going to communities. Just to talk about the Right Start campaign. A mother can be at home and do different activities with the child without taking the child to an ECD center. For example, especially parents who are living very far and who don't have means to take a child to an ECD center. But education, as I said earlier, is a foundation and it starts at home. The school or an ECD center should be there to build on the foundation that has already been laid at home. And it's not expensive to teach a child from the young age about respect, about cultural diversity, about, let's say, the country. It's not at all expensive. So I think it's for us to change our mindset about thinking that ECD is expensive. And also what we need to do is to really start, as parents, to start recognizing that if I don't play my role as a parent to teach my child how to wash, for example, a cup, I should not expect to go to grade 1 and the child starts doing that. It's important to really start doing that at home. And what I would also like to highlight here, in terms of now the expensive or what we need to do differently, we have got parents who need to look at, as a parent, you know your child better than anybody else. So it's important for parents to already start doing very basic things for their children, to start also, especially for children with disabilities or those with special needs, to recognize that this is my child, but something is telling me that this child is not developing, at the space that a child should normally develop, and then they should take up that to ask for support services, for example, in terms of early identification, for that child to be assisted before that child goes to formal education. That's what I would like to emphasize on. And also, I already alluded to it, we tend to think that if I give my child money, that's enough. So we need really to focus on play. The father can also play with the child. Yes. The mother can play with the child, and even the siblings can play with the child. So, and those, we don't need money for that. What we need, as I said again, is the time, is the laugh, and read to your child, play with your child, and you can play using really different activities at home. Yeah.
And I think this is also something that we want to quickly demonstrate, is that child stimulation and play doesn't have to involve costly materials that you've bought from Toys R Us or that have been bought from one of the supermarkets. Very stimulating materials can be made from simple everyday activities that might be otherwise thrown away or recycled. So we have a few examples here. This lovely young lady, a nice little doll for the kids to play with, to promote nurturing, to help to stimulate the imagination. And if you excuse me exposing you, darling, this doll is made from a simple water bottle that may easily have just been discarded. The head is made from a newspaper that's been rolled into a ball, and then some leftover materials. And this is something that a child is not going to turn their nose up at that and say, that's not good enough for me. That's something that's going to still promote nurturing and imagination. And also with this toy, you can practice voices. You can say, what color is this? There's different sensory things that feel different that help to develop the child's sensory skills. So something like this costs nothing and can help to really stimulate the child's learning. Similarly, these little colorful boxes here are just made matchboxes that have been taped up and painted with different amounts of matches in them. So for little kids, this could be a rattle. Bear in mind to always use child-friendly paints, but a rattle that helps to promote learning, hearing from the different ears, also singing. And also you can say to the child, what color is this? What color is this? How many do I have? I have 2 here. Here I have 3. If I take 1 away, I have 2. So simple things like this can really help to promote the brain development and understanding. And this little contraption here, again, very simple. It's a jar that's been painted, has some fabric put onto it. And for little kids, when they're developing these fine motor skills, each of these ribbons has a different feel. And it also makes a bit of a different sound. So these just help the child to pick up on fine motor skills, develop these sensory skills. Also, again, color, drum. You could go forward and take a step further and put something in here that rattles. So from something, again, very simple that you can just find in your environment, you can make things that help to stimulate a child's brain development. And then with simple items at home, Aune will also just quickly display how very simple items at home, like a cup that you will have in a household, can be used to stimulate children's development.
One of the aspects that we also tend to undermine is the issue of early numeracy and reading skills. And that can really, as you indicated already, develop from a very, very early age. And whatever you do with a child, we must always, parents sometimes tend to use baby language. That is wrong. Never use baby language with a child because you want the child to develop. So from the first day of birth, speak normally to a child as if you are speaking to an adult. But importantly, always praise and encourage the child to do something. In terms of now having, again, the household items, just to demonstrate, Jessica, can you please give me the yellow cup? Beautiful, thanks, my dear. This is a yellow cup, and in here you can also drink water, and you can do many things with the yellow cup. Jessica, I would also like you to put back the yellow cup, but put it next to the doll. Beautiful, well done. I would like you to show me 2 yellow things on this table. Just 2 of the yellow items on the table. Try again. Not bad. Try again, my dear. One is good and the other one? Excellent. Well done. So through that, you are praising the child, you are doing numeracy in terms of 2, you are doing early literacy in terms of yellow, next to, so you don't need to be an expert. It's just using the things that you normally use at home to really stimulate the child. And through that also, you are building the child's confidence by thanking the child, encouraging the child to try again, and by saying thank you, you are motivating the child to know that he or she is really doing well.
Everything that we've spoken about and everything that we will still speak about can be found in more detail at the Right Start website, which is www.rightstart.com.na. So everything about learning materials, low-cost learning materials for children's development, about identification of children with disabilities, and about these general information about the campaign and why ECD matters can all be found there and more on the website. So Louise, back to you. And I'm asking you this also as the only man on our panel and somebody who I know is a real advocate for ECD. I want to ask you about some of the myths and misconceptions about ECD and about child rearing that sometimes lead us down the wrong paths in Namibia.
You've said it yourself. Most people, when they hear ECD and child rearing, they think it's a woman's job. They think that that is not a man's place to take care of a child. It's a woman's job. That is a misconception. Like Dr. Victor said, fathers should reach to their children, fathers should play with their children, and so forth. So that's one of the myths. I myself am involved with kids. I'm a man, and I produce content for the kids, with the kids. So it's nice engagement. It's a nice interaction. That's one of the myths. Another myth is that ECD learning or early childhood development is only done at ECD centers, which is not true. ECD starts at home. ECD learning and development and the nurturing and the caring, it starts at home. So the caregivers, the parents, they should start at home already. And it also means that the community as a whole should be involved. So if you see a child, for example, struggling and you know that's your neighbor, you should help out where you can. So ECD takes all of us. It takes a community. It takes a village to raise a child, basically. And another misconception I'd say would be ECD is not cool. This is now this is now in our young professional minds. You know, you are trying to go to varsity, deciding what to study is, oh my God, I'm going to be a doctor, accountant, and a lawyer. ECD is cool because you are literally molding a child. You are helping develop the nation of Namibia, the future generation. The foundation, again, is very important. So personally, I think ECD is cool. So.
Well, thank you very much. I think if you're on board and promoting that ECD is cool, it helps the brand a lot.
No, definitely.
So we're very grateful. And I think maybe I'd also just add, I think one of the very common misconceptions around child rearing is that there needs to be a lot of discipline and violence involved in getting a child to be a well-behaved, well-performing child. So maybe Dr. Victor, if you can just speak a bit more about positive discipline and about some of the negative effects that corporal punishment has on child development.
I earlier on alluded to the issue of the brain development, and I spoke about toxic stress or toxicity. And this involves also how we as parents try to discipline our children. So you don't need to use punishment. You don't need to use harsh words to discipline a child. You can really use positive discipline to bring out the aspects of child. I also indicated earlier the issue of respect. If you teach the child from the beginning about respect, if the child does something wrong, you just need to say, my love, this is not how we do things. You do it this way. So you do not need to use really violence to discipline a child, because by the time you do that, that child, again, going back to the issue of foundation, would grow up believing that you discipline wrong with wrong. And these are the things that as a nation, we should really try to avoid instilling in our children. Talk to the child nicely, motivate, encourage, and praise. Those are the ways that we should really focus on as parents, other than using always a punishment, a worse punishment to discipline a child. I wanted to go back to something that both you and Louis mentioned in terms of also stimulation. One of the things that I think as a country we need to improve on is when we talk about our children with disabilities. I would like to refer back to that again. The example you gave, for example, of the doll, and know the gross or fine motor skills. You can really also do that with children, any child from an early age, for them to know to also differentiate between things. And for children with disabilities, they need also their bodies to also, especially kids who have got some severe disabilities, they need to be stimulated on a daily basis. In some cases, our parents don't afford to go to the doctor. But at home, the parents can really use different homemade activities or materials to stimulate the child for his or her fine motor skills to be developed. And also what I've realized in some cases is we find parents, because the child is not developing at the space the parent thinks the child should be developed, they start using really abusive language or abusing the child. And those are the things that as parents we should really be very careful about, and not to discipline or to use any type of violence with the children. And coming back to protection, gender-based violence is another concern that we as a country should really address. Because if I as a parent, if I as a father is insulting my partner or my wife in front of that child is going to grow up thinking that that's how a woman should be disciplined, or as how a child should be disciplined. So we really need to start thinking about positive issues of disciplining our children.
I couldn't agree more. And I think in terms of the ECD age, if we get that age group right, with not promoting violence, promoting communication, promoting these more nurturing practices, then we have the opportunity to really reduce the overall levels of violence in our society as these children grow up, have healthier relationships, better coping mechanisms, better communication skills, and then we should be seeing a new generation of young Namibians who don't feel the need to resort to violence when they have issues that they can't cope with. So we've been talking about early childhood development, and we'll be right back. Welcome back. Our discussion today has been about early childhood development and the National Right Start campaign. Before we move on to our next question, here's another video.
Children develop brain connections through their everyday experiences. They're built through positive interactions with their parents and caregivers, as well as by using their senses to interact with the world. Children who are exposed to violence are more likely to suffer severe effects, which include stunted brain development, reduced capacity for learning, behavioral problems, and difficulty making friends and forging healthy relationships. These effects have lifelong impacts. This includes direct violence against children, as well as violence in the home, schools, and communities. Babies and young children grow, learn, and develop optimally when they receive love and affection, attention, encouragement, and mental stimulation. Keep a child's life and home free from violence to give a child the best start in life. Visit www.rightstart.com.na to learn more about how you can make a child's first steps the right steps.
So one more thing I'd like to add about common myths and misconceptions is around the financing of ECD in the home. We know a lot of parents are saving up for that university fund for their children. But in order for their children to get to the point that they can make it to university, they need to have this solid foundation. So some of that money for the university fund, I really appeal to parents. Take some of that money and put it towards the pregnant mothers, the little babies, your 3 to 5 year olds in the home and in ECD centers, because this investment will help to ensure that that child of yours goes flying through the school system and actually makes it to university where that college fund can be used. And Loide, I believe there was something you also wanted to add about early stimulation.
I really like the demonstration that Dr. Aune showed us here, but something that I want to add, parents like to buy inappropriate toys. For an example, guns. Because it's a boy, I will just buy this gun for him to learn. I don't know to shoot who. And this is really what we try to teach parents, to avoid such kind of toys to buy to their children, but to do it right, to see which one stimulate my child. In future, this child can learn something that is helping or saving or protecting him or her and the next person. So we really want parents or guardians to have this understanding because of the appropriate toys that they buy for their children.
We're living in these very unprecedented times now with the COVID-19 pandemic, and to hear from you about how this pandemic and the mitigation measures around it are affecting children of ECD age and what can be done to support children during this time.
For now, like our ECD centers has been opened since the 22nd of June. We really are trying to do the best. Together with our partnership, we managed to get preventative protective equipment that we send to our ECD centers for them to use so that in future, maybe they will be able to cope themselves. So we have a team in the regions that take care of these centers, that visiting or monitoring these centers, do assessment and see whether they adhere to the rules or regulations that the ministry set. During this time, we also want to introduce now a home-based education, because we see that it's really very difficult for us to have it as normal time. Especially our region in Erongo could not really, like now, start the school. However, we're trying to reach parents, or we're trying to teach parents how they can help their children inside the houses rather than go to the centers. And this one, we want even to continue with it, not only during this period, but in future, we want to have the home-based centers.
And maybe I'd also just add that this is a period where children are feeling a lot of uncertainty. They're picking up on some of the fear and the concerns and the changes that are happening because of COVID-19. So it's really important that we're speaking to our children about it, explaining to them clearly in a child-friendly, age-appropriate way what this virus is, why we're seeing these changes, and encourage them to also be very involved in the mitigation measures. So making little songs around hand washing. In the ECD centers, where we're trying to promote social distancing with young children, it can be difficult, but we can turn that into a game, making the children flap their wings and say, your wings are not allowed to touch my wings, and trying to make it into a kind of fun and engaging discussion with children, so that it's not something that makes them feel too stressed or too worried. So as we start wrapping up, I would just like to ask you, Dr. Victor, from a more policy point of view, as the education and ECD expert, how do you see, what do you see that still needs to be done in Namibia to try to make ECD more of a priority and to try to improve quality and access to ECD services?
Before I respond to that question again, which is basically linked, I would like to go back to what you indicated with regard to saving for university. I would like to give an example again of a tree. If you have got a tree, that tree would not start bearing fruits if it does not have strong roots. And it's the same for the child to do well, for that foundation to be laid. So we need to really water their roots very well so that they can start bearing fruits. So for children, again, it's for us as parents, as communities, to start investing in those years, build stronger roots, water their roots to be strong so that in 10 years, 5 years, then they will start bearing fruits. Now, in terms of Namibia as a country, what we need to realize is that the first years, the early years, basically from 0 to 8 years, are the strongest, and that's where investments should come. The 4th National Development Plan, as well as the 5th National Development Plan, which is NDP 4 and 5, put strong emphasis on focusing on early childhood development in terms of investing so that we can put more resources in there. Currently, as a country, we are putting less than 2% of our resources on early childhood education, but we are spending more in prisons. We are spending more on focusing on unemployment rates. We are spending more on addressing health issues. But if we put that money into if we invest meaningfully into early childhood development, would be seeing less dropout rates, would be seeing less crime, would be seeing less people having to go to access health facilities, and would also be seeing many of our children with disabilities progressing well and becoming responsible citizens. So what we need to focus on is not only to think about university, but it's really to look at how do we ensure that we build a nation where all children, whether they go to university or not, can still become future and responsible citizens once they are out of school. And for me, my plea to government is really for us and I'm pleading this is also within the framework of the UN, is to advocate for government to reinvest and to refocus their resources to focus more on really the early years, which is basically if we can focus from pre-ECD through primary education and invest more in that, that would start to see the gains.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think investing early in a child's life and investing in early childhood development, it makes a lot of economic sense as well, because you see significant savings in other areas, like you mentioned, and then also you start to reap real demographic dividends. So I think it's an easy one to argue for. So to start wrapping up, I would just like to ask Luis to bring us to a conclusion. We'd really like to know what's next for the Right Start campaign. What can people look out for? Where can they see more of the campaign? Where can they find your program? What are the exciting things on the horizon?
Okay, so basically we are trying to reach as many people as possible. This is through the usage of mass media. This is your TV, your radio, going into the communities. This is your social media, your Instagram, your Facebook, your Twitter, the website, like you mentioned. The idea is to, again, reach as many people as possible, and just to ensure that the messaging around the Right Start campaign is out there, and not only to parents, but to the caregivers, the communities, the young people. So everybody needs to be involved, from your corporate level to the youngest child in the house who's also having a sibling of sorts. So everybody needs to be aware that the Right Start campaign is here, and we are all of us together here to make a child's first steps the right steps, basically. For the TV viewing, again, on the website, if people can go to the website, they will find the centers and the information as to where to get more information around the Right Start campaign. There's radio adverts, there's radio shows, there's TV shows, panel discussions. It's a lot going on. So, so by the end of this year, definitely we need people to be involved in a child's life. So ECD needs to be cool again, needs to be a thing. So yes.
Thank you very much. So viewers, please keep an eye out for the Right Start campaign. Visit our Facebook pages, our Instagram, Twitter, the Right Start website. Look for us in the newspaper. You'll be hearing us on TV and radio. And I'd just like to say thank you so much to the guests today. Ms. Loide Velishavo, thank you so much. Mr. Luis Munana, Dr. Aune Victor, thank you for joining us to make a child's first steps the right steps. We hope that this has been useful for you, that there was valuable information shared. Please, if you have any comments, any additions you would like to add, use the hashtag RightStart on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And we really look forward to more of these discussions. And you can learn more about everything we've spoken about on www.rightstart.com.na. So that concludes our discussion on ECD and the Right Start campaign. Look out for more panel discussions like this. I'm Jessica Brown. Thank you very much for watching.